to talk now about an IEP. An IEP is an Individualized Education Program. That is the plan that's defined under the federal law, the IDEA, as what a child is entitled to once they're found eligible for special education and related services.
Let's break that down by the letters. Individualized Education Program.
Okay, so individualized means that the document, and the IEP is actually a document. It works much like a contract between the parents and the school district, and it's mandated under the federal law, and it has all sorts of things that it has to have in it that are very detailed, and we don't have to get into all of that right now. But the document itself is supposed to describe the program that the child is receiving. And the I in individualized is so important because the IEP document is supposed to meet the unique needs of the child for whom it's written. And that is something that sounds so basic, and yet it's where I'm in disputes with school districts a lot because each child is different. And what I find sadly occurs in a lot of school districts is they offer you the program they have instead of the program the child needs. And even within the same diagnosis, no two child's needs are identical. And school districts, sadly, because it's easier, is they'll say, well, this is our program for kids who have specific learning disabilities. Well, maybe this child who has a specific learning disability would not be appropriate for that particular program. And unfortunately, the IEP reflects pretty much what every other child who's in that program's IEP looks like, so it's not really as individualized as it should be to meet the unique needs of that child.
And in order for the program to be appropriate, and we discussed the term free appropriate public education, which is FAPE, the child's program must be individualized,
right,
so it's appropriate for them, not the student next to them, not to the student sitting behind them, individualized for their, as you said, unique needs.
Well, and there are some tips that I'll give for parents to start to recognize whether or not their child's IEP is actually individualized. If as you're planning it at that IEP meeting, you're hearing the staff say things like, well, this goal is being put here because we always have math in the morning, and so it's important that we do. And it starts to sound like any kid in this class, you can pick them up and cookie cutter this exact document for that child, then it's really not tailored to that unique needs of that child.
So education.
Education. So education is more than just academics.
Yes.
It includes functional and adaptive skills. So the IEP is an individualized education plan. It is supposed to focus on the child's education. Sometimes that means that there are services that are necessary for a child to receive benefit from their education that may even take place in a different environment than school. This is, again, where we have a lot of disputes. So if a child requires home services for 5 hours a week in order for them to benefit from that IEP, well, those services should be listed in the IEP. And even though it may be focusing on daily living skills, that by definition of the IDEA is still education. So parents are often faced with arguments with school districts where the parent is saying, well, he really needs this, and they say, oh, well, that's not a school issue. Well, if it's an educational issue, it doesn't matter if it's happening in the schoolhouse, it's still education.
And if you consider the fact that education is not just academics, it's behavioral, it's communication, it's social, it's emotional well-being, it's perhaps physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech and language services. You can have IEP goals, Individualized Education Program goals, that address all those very specific needs, right, not just academic goals.
Right. And program is pretty much what it sounds like. You're developing a plan for the child, but it's a document, but what the document is supposed to represent is what this child's education looks like. And so depending on the child, it could look very much like a child's program who doesn't have an IEP, but maybe they just have additional, 1 hour a week that they're pulled out for some support. And for another child, their entire day could be special education and related services. Again, it depends on the unique needs of that child.
And that's an IEP.